Nottingham is a vibrant 21st century city that is currently undergoing much change and development. The government has recently designated it as one of only 7 core English cities. However, it is also very much an historic city that grew in importance through its control of the River Trent.
More than most British cities, Nottingham is defined by its landmarks. The Norman Castle to the west, the Saxon settlement to the east, and then the creation of the city, the marketplace, the City Hall.
Back into the Middle Ages and beyond, people would come to Nottingham over the Trent. The sights that would greet them were first of all the castle, and then the church, and then later on the council house behind us. In a sense, that's the triangle of skyline features that defines Nottingham. And I think there's a real danger of allowing developers to come in and define a new skyline that obliterates the past.
St Mary's Church and the castle are historically important because they represent the twin seats of power of religion and the monarchy. Throughout history, they have acted as bulwarks, announcing and protecting the city, whilst also defining its character.
Council House is a very symbolic building for Nottingham. It shows a great deal of civic confidence. It was, after all, the building that was created when Nottingham, the market town, became Nottingham the city. Of course, when it was built, many of the buildings in Nottingham were quite low. As buildings around it get higher, its significance as a landmark inevitably gets diminished.
Historically, the skyline has been fairly low, so the medieval history is still very much in evidence as you look at the skyline, or indeed it was until very much the recent period when tall buildings have started to impinge on those views.
Long views are important because they reflect the city's development and they give people an understanding of its history and uniqueness.
The historic landmarks of Nottingham have connected people to the city through the long views that they have to them from the inner suburbs and further out.
What Nottingham should be doing is making sure that the views of the Dome and the Castle and St Mary's are maximised to as many places around the city as possible, rather than isolated to single viewpoints. When you start to isolate those views, they become very much less important and you diminish the uniqueness of the city hugely.
It is important for Nottingham to continue the successful economic regeneration of the last 30 years.
The new development that regeneration brings to cities brings with it the possibility that many of them will end up looking the same. I think the challenge for policymakers and planners is to ensure that new development accentuates the character of cities rather than diluting it.
What worries me is that in recent years, developers have been allowed to put up a series of apartment blocks round the sort of commercial ring in the city that exclude all of the communities that immediately adjoin it, St Anne's, Nenton, the Meadows, Lenton. The danger is that developers will construct a sort of Berlin Wall that inside it contains the glittering wealth of commercial development and affluence in the city centre. But outside it, in the areas where people live, is the exclusion zone. And so Nottingham then becomes a place that feels like a state of siege and that excludes its own citizens. And it just seems to me that that sort of development is not only wrong in principle, but it is utterly destructive of the notion of social inclusion that the City Council and the civic society have tried to develop over decades.
It's important to see buildings from a much broader and wider viewpoint.
I think the key to success in developing anywhere is building in context. In Nottingham there's the added challenge that a great many of the buildings that are built are visible from long distances.
People's experiences of Nottingham and its uniqueness are founded fundamentally, in my view, on the way they walk around the city and the way they appreciate it as someone moving through and around it. And therefore, we should focus far more on a building's relationship to roots and ways people understand those roots, rather than just looking at each building on its own.
Nottingham has a wealth of good new developments that include Experian, Capital One and the Inland Revenue.
The Inland Revenue building is a fine example of how we should see future development proceeding in Nottingham. It's relatively low in scale, it respects the scale of the castle in the background, it allows views to and from the castle, its materials reflect the materials around it, the level of detail and quality of the building is high and again reflects the level of quality of the historic parts of Nottingham.
Also, there has been much good use of existing buildings, such as the Picture and Piano and the Adams building. These have helped to maintain and enhance Nottingham's unique character. However, many developments seem to ignore the context in which they're situated.
If we're not careful, we're going to lose the very essence of what makes Nottingham special, it gives it character, and what makes people want to come here.
I think in most cases Nottingham would be better served by having fewer but better quality landmark buildings, and the rest trying to stitch Nottingham back together with quality, simple buildings that focus on the streetscape and not on buildings themselves.
Nottingham is an attractive and successful city. We want it to be a great European city, and with its unique history and topography, it has the potential of becoming so. Instead of destroying Nottingham's character by hiding and swamping it with inappropriate and out-of-scale developments, we need to exploit its uniqueness and individuality.